Okay, good morning, everybody. We are going to get started. It is Wednesday, January 8th. This is a special meeting of the Darien Board of Ed Curriculum Committee. We have K-3 literacy on our agenda as always, and then we'll have a K-12 language update. So I will turn it right on over. Oh, our next meeting is Wednesday, February 5th. So I'm back again. Amy, you're up.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. We are excited today to continue our discussion around K-3 literacy and the really unbelievable commitment our district has had for the last several months, actually, for much more than several months, but for the last year, especially with regard to the steering committee and the work of the core review team and exploring different resources to enhance our programming in Darien Public Schools. So today we're going to revisit a little bit of the work with regard to the ARPA grant. We're going to have an opportunity again to hear from our staff, which has been a wonderful, I think, addition the last several Board of Education Curriculum Committee meetings, hearing directly from our staff who are implementing resources within the district. We're going to talk a little bit about K-3 literacy today. You're going to hear from Julia a little bit about a potential opportunity to partner with TNTP, the new teacher project. That's some group that the state has brought in to support districts who are looking into considering additional resources for their literacy programming. The updated writing units of study that are a part of the curriculum that is currently in place in Darien Public Schools. You'll be able to hear from our teachers with that, and we'll follow up with some discussion. So to keep our meeting moving, I'm going to turn it over to Julie, and she'll also introduce our staff who's with us today.
Perfect. Thank you. So we just put the timeline in as a reminder, and we've talked about this before. So I'm just going to start by introducing our staff that you have not met before. Hillary Reck is a first grade teacher at Holmes. Debbie Lynch is a literacy specialist at Holmes. Christy Martin, second grade teacher at Royal, and Melissa Malik, third grade teacher at Tokenique. So Amy talked about our agenda. The Right to Read grant, as you know, our district was awarded $145,000 that was allocated. We spent every single penny of it by December. We were required to use it for only approved curriculum materials on the state's list. So we were able to purchase foundation decodables, mostly for our K-2 classrooms, but a little bit for third grade, and the feedback has been wonderful. We also supported AimsWeb for 2 years and our foundation's digital platform. As you will recall, this required a leadership team to spend 10 days, full days of professional learning by the state. Amy talked a little bit about this partnership with TNTP, the new teacher partnership. This is a nonprofit educational research and consulting group. Amy and I met with them a couple of times, and we were impressed with what they would provide to districts. It is paid for by the state, and they still have to get back to us. They are not allocated, there are not funds allocated to work with all districts, but we are hoping that there is an opportunity. They have a tool, a lens to go in and observe classrooms and give districts, in collaboration with districts, a lens to look at your strengths, your areas of growth, maybe some blind spots, and develop an action plan. And we like the aspect that it is a partnership. So I put a link to the organization if you want to learn more about them. I'm going to talk briefly about WordLove, and the teachers will elaborate on that. This is a resource that we implemented this year. We did not have a dedicated vocabulary program other than what we were doing with the ruler feeling words. What we love about it is that it's explicit instruction with multisensory. There's visuals, there's auditory components to it. It's kinesthetic. It's fun, it's engaging, it's aligned to our read alouds. There's additional units in character traits and morphology. We have provided professional learning to our teachers, and the feedback from students and staff has been positive. Our new writing units of study, as Amy said, this is just an update to our curriculum. The lessons are streamlined. There's additional resources for small group differentiated instruction. There are grammar lessons in each unit, and a continued emphasis on the writing process, student agency, choice, and voice, which we value. Assessments, this is a slide from the student achievement presentation back in October. These are the different types of assessments that we use, but we thought it was important to let you know how we monitor student learning and progress in literacy. We have AimsWeb, which is a universal screener for all, we use it in all grades, K through 8, actually, but it is mandated in grades K through 3. And if you link that AimsWeb Plus, you can see all of the different subtests that we use to monitor student learning, and it's quite robust. We also this year implemented a quick phonics screener in grades 1 and 2. This is something that because we're using into reading and foundations, we just wanted to have something that was not program specific to look at how our kids are doing with phonics. We have summative assessments, our foundations unit tests, the into reading end of module tests, our formative assessments, which are for instruction, Haggerty phonemic awareness. We have phonic decoding in K2 and 3 as needed. We have a high frequency word assessment. We use decodable running records as an assessment, and running records for readers who are at level F and beyond. We have writing on demands, which is not process writing. It's what kids can do without any teacher support. We have teacher observations, response to questions, and smarter balance interim assessments. So we really know where our kids are. We have a lot of assessments, and we feel like it's an important part of our learning process. So with that, I am going to open this up to any questions that you have for our teachers and any thoughts that they want to add.
Thank you. I don't know if you guys have anything, introductory comments prepared, or if you're really just looking for questions.
If you guys don't mind. Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure being here. Hillary Reck, first grade teacher at Holmes. Thank you. I would just like to speak to a few things. Word Love is an absolutely incredible program. Mike Oakes has created a program that teaches our students vocabulary right from the go. It provides gestures with students who need that to ground themselves in what the meaning is. Additionally, there are games, which we all might say, oh, it's games. Well, that's how students really learn, right? They're having fun while learning. So at the same time, they don't even know. I've seen them use the vocabulary that they are learning in their writing. I've heard them say it in speaking to their peers. So for example, blurted. Instead of saying, oh, Mrs. Rack, Landon called out, Mrs. Rack, Landon blurted something out. And it's just fun to hear them incorporate it. Additionally, it's really helpful for students who are MLLs because they are able to see the pictures, identify it, especially if this is something that culturally they don't have it. Right? I think that's incredibly important to recognize. So they're learning the gestures, they're seeing the visuals, and then they're playing the games to reinforce it. So we're seeing it in their writing, we're seeing it in their everyday speak. I'd like to think I have a bit of a unique perspective as well. So my first year here, I taught TC unrevised. Second year, taught TC revised in second grade. This year, I'm teaching TC revised in first grade. So I think something I have loved seeing is that it is, I don't want to say simple, but it is just very streamlined for teachers. There is a clear teaching point, and with the on-demands, I know Julie touched upon this, but typically we give a pre-assessment, see where students are, right? That informs our teaching. With that, I'm then able to go to the blueprints that they provide for small group instruction, and I can look at every single group I have and be able to create small groups to improve their writing. Then we typically, I know they do this in kindergarten, they give a mid-unit assessment to just see, have we closed those gaps and where are they now? So we see that growth. Then at the end, we're then able to see at the post-assessment, what growth have they made? And we can look back at exactly what small groups we have pulled, what we have done to see that growth from start to end. And again, this isn't I'm teaching into it. This is independent student writing. And it's pretty remarkable to see. So I do really like the revised units in addition to the fact that as a first grade teacher, knowing the continuum into second grade, how we build upon that. That has been very enlightening to me, and I think that's so important. And I truly love having that perspective, knowing where I have to not just get students at the end of the year, but where they need to be to really at the end of second grade going into third. So, thank you.
I don't know if the other teachers want to share their experience with Word Love, or can
So Word Love, obviously came this year.
you pull the mic a little bit closer to you just because.
Closer to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, just pull right.
Can I just talk louder?
Yeah. Both work.
So I've been in district for a long time, and this is the first time that we've had an explicit vocabulary instruction. So it's been great. It's nice to have an organized program to follow. It's nice to have words that are common across the grade level. And it's a great way to do it because you're actively engaging the children in front of you, both in how you're presenting the words, how they're interacting with the words, both in the gestures, as Hillary said, which are a lot of fun, and the kind of games that you're playing to practice them. I would agree with Hillary that you're seeing the transfer both in their language and in their writing, which is exciting to do. And then the words all come from read aloud books that are incorporated through the TC units called Let's Gather. So we get a read aloud book and then we explore that as a read aloud, and then that's our launching pad for the next 4 words we're going to study in vocabulary. So it's a nice connecting the words into a real book. So they're not just words from space kind of thing. They are grounded in literature that is then a part of your classroom. So that's an also nice component about having about doing the Word Love, is having that connected piece. The kids are really enjoying it for sure. I'm curious, I should say, as into next year, you know, when the kids come up, if we're doing Word Love again, like, do they get bored of doing the games? Do they cycle through, like, that kind of longevity of it is hard to say. And I know in second grade, it's fun to do all those things. I'm not sure how far this is going to go up, but in the upper grades, do they have the same enthusiasm for how it's being presented? Those are kind of questions that would be, you know, kind of a broader subject.
And
but-
I don't know the program well, but can you speak to to that point of longevity? Like,
Yeah, I mean, from what we've been in 5th grade classrooms, the kids love it. This is our first year of implementing it. So the games are, some of them are the same, but they're different, and some are different, and the words are more sophisticated.
Yes.
So
and from the learning specialist point of view, do you see anything, do you have any thoughts of Word Love? What,
So I have the perspective.
With the-
I have the perspective of seeing the inter-reading vocabulary and the Word Love vocabulary happening across the school. And from what I've heard, I know in inter-reading, they're telling me that, oh, the best part of the inter-reading is the read alouds and the vocabulary. But I'm also hearing that it's also hitting the mark in these classrooms as well. So I think incorporating vocabulary in a story that is addressing a skill, I think, is a great thing. And I think both programs have kind of tackled that. The games, I know the kids are loving. And I think I'm excited to see the morphology work, because from my perspective, that is the piece that I think really needs to be hit at home. And I love that Word Love has that stuff going on. So.
And I will say too, one thing that kids thrive on is a predictable structure.
I agree.
So I do think also that when they know it, it can go quick, it can go more quickly. So vocabulary really is 5 to 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, the way that they have the program broken down, it's really like quick moments of time that, like, in a day, you essentially play 2 games after you've introduced the words, but you don't have to play them at the same time in the same moment. They can be played because you've got 10 minutes before gym, like, let's go play, but they know how to play the game because you've already introduced the game. So it's a quick, so it doesn't have to be, it's not like this 45-minute lesson that's taking up this huge chunk of time. That's not how it rolls out.
Can we talk to the visuals?
So each word comes with a chart, which is a picture showing acting out the vocabulary word. So if the word is effort, you see some drawing of a child like lifting up something heavy, and then the gesture for the kids is like bird. And so they do that same motion. So the visuals there to remind them of the gesture, and on the bottom, it says exactly what the word means. So it's they have them in like small, medium, and large sizes. So we have them up in the classroom, but then we also have them in like the kids' writing folders so that they can refer back to them as a reference.
Okay. Katie, I can't see you, so just pop in if you have questions. Greg, do you-
Yeah, I just have a couple. It sounds like there's pretty unanimous positive feedback on word love. Is it duplicative with the vocabulary program with interreading?
It's presented a little similarly, but it doesn't have the hand gestures. I don't think it has the same visuals. And I think it's a little bit more embedded, but I know that what I'm hearing from the interreading teachers, they really do enjoy the read alouds and the vocabulary is embedded. So I think it's presented in a similar way, but I feel that the kinesthetic piece and the visual piece is stronger with the word love.
And the games are
So-
not a
Yes,
part of
correct,
interreading.
So, hypothetically, if we choose interreading, is this an and or is this a and?
And or.
And or?
It's an angle.
Okay. And then my other question was taking a little bit of a step back. It sounds like vocabulary, these are new resources that are positive from your all's perspective, where it seems like there may have been somewhat of a shortfall previously. I think for us, as we're thinking about the collective curriculum around reading and writing, are there other areas that you don't have to necessarily give an answer right now, but are there other areas where we've got deficiencies that we need to address? And as we're thinking about endeavoring down this interreading path or something else, are those addressing those appropriately?
I could speak to that a little bit. I teach third grade at Tokenie. So we've been craving a vocabulary program for years, and this word love, I will say, is everything we wanted it to be and more. Where I think that we're still lacking is a grammar program. My team and I have been loosely dabbling in the current writing units, and there are some grammar and punctuation editing lessons embedded within the program, but it's not enough, in my opinion. For example, in each unit, there are 3 bends, and it says that there are about 1 or 2 lessons per bend within grammar and punctuation and editing. And that's just not sufficient enough for 3rd grade. And I know going forward, I taught 5th grade at one point too. It's not near as much as we need to be. I find that my team and I are continually pulling resources of our own to get the students to where they need to be on a 3rd grade Common Core level, but also to get them ready for the SBAs. So grammar and punctuation, I think, is something we would love to have more
I
resources
completely
for.
agree. As a teacher and a parent of girls who went through the school district and are now in high school, grammar needs a boost.
Grammar used to be a big focal point. I know because my mom was a teacher for 25 years.
Yeah.
There's really nothing else.
I also think some coaching would be great too, to
Yes.
have some coaching in this area, because I think it's not something that we really do need too much of a program to teach grammar. I think it's more teaching teachers of how to address it with the kids.
And having a uniformity with that, because like I said, we're pulling resources, but I don't know what other 3rd grade teachers are pulling for resources, or if they're doing the same thing versus finding something else to focus on that they think is important as well.
And so you're not seeing that addressed in the interreading program at all?
So from what I understand, interreading does address grammar. It's not being addressed in the new TC units enough. But interreading, from what I understand,
It's minimal.
interreading, that's one of the positives from at least the 1st grade teachers at my school, is they are embracing and enjoying the actual explicit grammar instruction that's happening with the interreading.
And that's what, when your colleagues sat at the table, that was one of their
Right.
points, that they really did feel that the grammar piece was strong. Melissa mentioned pulling different resources, and this, to me, the biggest issue with this whole process is that there's not a one size fits all like answer for everybody. And it's tricky that we do want to, word love sounds great, but we also want to pull from the interreading grammar, and how do we make that all work?
And I think that's with our curriculum development, right? Because a resource is not a curriculum.
Sarah, can I
So-
jump?
Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
Thank you. I so apologize for not being able to be in person. These are my favorite meetings, and thank you so much to the staff that's taking your time to be here. You guys are an invaluable resource to hear directly from you guys about what's happening in the classroom. I do want to just clarify a couple of things. One, I want to make sure that we all understand that we're on the same page, that the reason we have a different cohort of teachers today is that these teachers are doing something different than into reading. So we don't actually have any teachers right now that are both piloting into reading and word love or the new units of study. So I do think that's just an important distinction for us as board members to keep in mind, that we have different subsets of teachers that are trying both things. We don't have anyone that's kind of like done both in different years. So it will be important for us to recognize that things are always a little bit different in experience. And I am hearing too that that things are a bit different classroom to classroom and school to school, which is just a good reminder for us to keep in mind the work that we have to do in terms of making sure that as we go forward and we choose, you know, the resources that we will develop, our teachers themselves will then develop the curriculum to come in front of our students, that there is consistency across all of the buildings, because that's really important. I really appreciate the conversation coming back to grammar, because it's important for us to remember too that Into Reading is a comprehensive program that has a lot of things. And I know that we can get caught up sometimes into a one size fits all idea, but I think that's where it's important to come back to the idea that it's really our district and our teachers that turn a resource into curriculum. And I think we got some really good feedback from the Into Reading about just like the plethora of resources of pulling that. So I'm really interested today to hear about some of like the specific components, because it sounds to me like what I'm hearing is there's a focus on vocabulary, one aspect of resources here that seems to be going well, which is wonderful to hear. And then that there is some grammar updates to the units of study, but it sounds like that's not enough. And those pieces I'd really like to hear more about as well, because I think that, you know, grammar is something that we've been hearing for quite a long time about the impact of it in our high school students writing, from you know, sort of the deficiencies that they had at an elementary level. And I do want to make sure that we focus on discussing what the writing looks like. So I'm very curious to hear about how writing is going in the elementary levels. You know, what kind of feedback are students getting? What kind of instructions are happening? What are we seeing come out of their work? Not just from a content and a creativity component, which I think that, you know, Darien does a good job at nurturing along the way, but in systematic writing, you know, for communication, for structure. Do they understand parts of work? Can they translate that into sophisticated writing? So I would like to hear that. And then just one last thing, because I know it's hard to jump in via Zoom. I'm curious to hear about the small group instruction as well, and how the differentiation is going, and how much is needed in addition to our general education classrooms. How much paraprofessional support are you getting? How difficult is it to do small group differentiation when there's only one of you and there's, you know, 20 plus students? How many days does it take to do that same level across, you know, 20 kids? Thank you so much.
I can just jump in and answer that first part of your question, Katie, because one of the things that our core review team wanted to look at was the writing as well. So all of our teachers in grades 1 through 3 are doing an on-demand. Again, that's just, you know, a prompt, giving all students a prompt and scoring it against a rubric and looking at structure, elaboration, development, and that the grammar component, conventions and punctuation. And the core review team will look at that and see if there's any difference in the kids that have had each of those programs this year.
And to the point of the you know, small group instruction for the writing for the new revised units, do you feel, you just talked a little bit more of like what, you know, to Katie's point, like, are you seeing progress? Are you seeing, what's changed in the writing in the new units?
So I think that compared to the old units, the new units have many more options for what to do with small group work, and more visuals to go along with it so that you have a starting point to use with your students. For example, right now we're working on narrative writing, and it says if your students are having trouble elaborating on describing a character, a small group thing that you can do is take a student aside, they draw a little picture, and then they make little bubbles of words that go along with the person they're trying to describe, so then they can incorporate that within their writing. Whereas in the old units, I feel like it was just, here's what you can do with them, and there weren't as many visuals and as many tools that you could use. There's a lot more really beneficial tools with this unit. And in terms of structure, in third grade, we're very heavy on teaching the structure of writing. When it comes to nonfiction writing, they get the structure very well. It's very concise: introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion. And narrative writing historically is always very tricky because of figuring out when to make a paragraph. But I do believe that TC, the new unit and the old unit, do provide efficient structure.
We even talked about that budget page that is at the last piece. And Mrs. Robin couldn't be here today, but her question, I wanted to pass around the questions. She wanted to, I don't know if you want to talk to that budget page, or, I mean, it's the same that is it revised or is it the same?
No, it's the same.
Okay.
as-
So her question was, let me just make sure that I phrase it right. What is included in that compendium, and what does that include?
So the reason that there's a range there is because it would depend on which resources and how the core review team, what their recommendations were. I do agree that the grammar component into reading is very strong. And, we like the writing process, and we do like the TC writing units. There really is nothing better. So that's a place where we could see keeping the grammar piece of into reading and putting that in. There's some questions about phonics and into reading versus foundations. What parts? Do we do the shared reading? Are there parts of that? So that's kind of what the core review team is looking at now.
Okay, so just so the top part of that budget, the interreading, that is only interreading, that is not keeping foundations, that is not including
Right,
is
that
just
would be that
strict,
one
is
straight
just buying
comprehensive
that
program.
hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
And
Okay.
I just, Sarah, if I can just add, I think with regard to the writing, we heard from some of our staff in the last probably 2 curriculum committee meetings where there was kind of some mixed feelings about the writing and the experiences that students were having. And so I don't know that yet we're able to decide and say that there, one would be a better option than the other with regard to the writing piece. The grammar is definitely very clear. But I think even with regard to process writing and some of what Katie was talking before about like skill development in writing and thinking about systematic writing, I think that we really need to take this next month to ask, as Julie said, we've issued kind of an on-demand to take a look at not only the scoring of that on-demand, but actually to look at the student work samples before us and consider not only the content and creativity, but the systematic and process aspects of writing as well. So that's something that I would say is we're too early to say that we favor one over the other.
Okay.
I thought that into reading was like a all or none situation.
So into reading, the way that that product is marketed is it's a comprehensive program, and a district could adopt everything, and it's a complete package. We have received feedback from the state, and we know that there are areas, as you've indicated, some of that we know that we need to shore up, or we may feel like we have some deficiencies or want to strengthen. We have the option, as always, and Sarah mentioned this before as well, to kind of take resources, and we should be taking resources and creating a curriculum here. So it doesn't mean that we have to only take that one resource.
Okay.
That's approved as a resource in and of itself,
Yeah.
but the state does still allow for a compendium approach.
So when you say compendium, what is that? What does that actually?
That
mean?
means kind of taking resources to support different types of literacy instruction in different areas of literacy instruction, instead of just taking from one.
So this is
resource.
the compendium, what you're saying is compendium, that's like a mixture of a bunch of different.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess what specifically is included in that? Like which,
And again, our core review team would have to look at that. It could be Heggerty and foundations. It could be into reading. It could be,
meaning like it
Teachers
would be the
College.
grammar part of into reading.
Right,
It would
it
be
could be that one
foundations, it would
part,
be
right,
word
right.
love or whatever, like it would be these different pieces.
right.
Different pieces.
It's
What we think are
weighing
the
each
best of what we
components.
want.
Right.
The greatest hits for lack.
I mean, if we think, I don't know, I'm just looking at the two. If we think that like the bottom one is all of our favorite programs and it's at a cost that's significantly discounted versus the other, why wouldn't we go with that path?
That might be what we determine.
jump in here for a quick second again? I'm sorry. Thank you. I think it's important to remember that there's a couple things going on here too. One is that, you know, Greg, if you look back at like our long list of current reading resources right now, it's extensive. I remember when my kids first got into the school and we used to host workshops and there was like a slideshow and it was like 20 resources that we were using for reading. So it's important to think about one is, and I don't have a problem with us saying we need an extra component and we might go with, let's say, something like interreading that is comprehensive, but we might still want something else. I don't have a problem with that. I do think that when we get into a long list of 20 reading and writing resources, one, we're paying for 20 different resources instead of one, and two, we make it that much more complicated to try to give a streamlined approach for what all teachers should be doing in all classrooms across all buildings. So I do think we need to look at that before we start making a very complicated mishmash of resources. I think that, you know, there's no question that we have a mandate to fill by the state, and interreading fulfills that. Teachers College does not. So we need to also be thinking about whether or not what our choices are doing are going to fulfill the requirement that we have to the state. So that's an important one. How we supplement, how we design our own curriculum in Darien based on the resources we choose. I have confidence in our staff for that, but we need to be thinking big picture about that. There's no question that phonics have been a deficiency for a long time. There's no question that writing has been a deficiency. So to Ms. Droller's point, I respectfully disagree that there's nothing better than Teachers College. I have been hearing for over a decade of how deficient our writing is, how disappointing our high school students' writing is. So I think that I'm very, very concerned about sticking with the Teachers College model on that. I do want to come back to a point I made earlier, which is I would like to understand small group instruction and how paraprofessional support is being utilized currently. That's very important for current and for future planning.
Katie does point out, good morning, everybody. By the way, thank you for being here this morning. Appreciate it. We have been in contact with the state the whole way through this process. Regarding the finances, certainly we will consider the finances. I won't say this casually. I'm not so much concerned about the finances as opposed to what's the right program for our kids. And I can't say for a difference that I would lean one way or the other. I've always said through this process, I'm going to bring to the table. We've worked collaboratively with the State Department. Actually, we're going to have another, we are calling ourselves another meeting with the State Department to give them another update, whether they want to participate with us or not. We're inviting them to participate in that particular process. Yes, and on a board level, we can discuss some of these things in terms of what happens if the state doesn't support our program. This is just anecdotally around the state and around our particular area. There are districts that just doing nothing or just ignoring the whole thing. We have never done that. We have said we weren't doing that, but I'm not recommending to the board. But the board has to make an executive discernment on my actions regarding that. But I'm not supporting a program that my experts in reading are not supporting in the district. Yes, this has been a great opportunity actually, first in a long time, of actually looking at the resources, comparing them to our reading units of study and so on. So we're in that process. We've been very upfront with the state. They may or may not agree with us. I'm hopeful they will. We've even at the most recent Caps Cave convention, we had an opportunity to talk to them candidly. I think they'll be receptive at least to the idea that we have been absolutely 100% inclusive and thoughtful in our process. So I'm hopeful that they will support us. But is there a possibility they don't? And what happens if they don't? Well, that is a discussion for executive discussion with the board and myself regarding that. But I've always said to my teachers, my administrators, I've been at many of these meetings actually. If whatever you are deciding on this, expert-wise is what we're leaning into. And that would be a recommendation I'd bring to the board of what my teachers want. In terms of paraprofessional support, if I may say respectfully a little bit, I just don't see this as the time that this is not a discussion for paraprofessional support. I understand it that people use it, but they're not the people who are actually delivering instruction, quality instruction. It's not the discussion necessarily for tomorrow. And the only other thing I would say is, Katie, you're on the Zoom, so as difficult it is for you to sort of like the nuance of your comments and mine too, so you'll forgive me, but there's been no extrapolation, right? Or correlation to our elementary performance and our high school performance. Yes, there have been discussions of priorities and so on and so forth, and everybody said these have been identified as priorities, but so I just don't want to over extrapolate or make determination. But the essence of what everybody has said here is on the table, yes.
And to the paraprofessional point, I asked on Saturday for a more comprehensive understanding of what those paras actually were doing now. So currently, so hopefully that can be part of this. And if literacy's
Well,
evolved.
we will be talking
Right.
about that on Tuesday evening.
Perfect. Okay.
And just, I would just want to comment, I think Katie, what you just said, all that resonates with me. That seems like it becomes more of a question actually for, I don't know if this is the right group of teachers, but for the teachers in terms of, for this compendium program, which is, it's what I'm hearing is like, this is the best of everything that we can find. So whether it's teachers college or something else, we're picking the best things we can. We're putting it into a uniform program where all the teachers and the curriculum will be based on those, and it will be consistent across teachers and everybody else. Is there an implementation issue with that versus having just into reading? That, I think that's like a pretty key question, because if there's not, then to me, it just comes down to the question that you had around the state. And I think we should try to get out ahead of that as much as possible and preview with them as early as possible what we're considering. And then the second question is cost. And based on what I'm looking at on this page, it's a significant discount, one versus the other. And it's better based on, if we're picking the best of the best, then by definition, it's better.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's, there's option A has some great parts, option B has some great parts. And I kind of feel like, you know, we'll have to wait to see what the recommendation is, but there are benefits to both. And I honestly, I would like to have something of all.
And I would say from my distance now, the teachers can disagree with me and feel free to disagree, or anybody else around the table. But from my perspective, the question of those, that's a great like observation, and that's a great actual nuance of this in terms of all of these pieces versus, and I think that's part of the dilemma along with TC. It's hard to do TC sometimes, right? And having something that grounds people as a fundamental resource will pay merit to how much is that really helpful to people, and how much is like, that's what we've been needed, whether it's into reading or some other thing. But
Yeah.
That dilemma is there, and I think it's worthy to, as a factor, how much that is really helpful, as opposed to the skill of doing all of these and putting together.
Chris and I were speaking about this before the meeting, is that, you know, as a seasoned teacher, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as a seasoned teacher, you feel comfortable, you know what your teachers need and are able to pull from what you've learned over the past couple decades. Whereas for a newer teacher, potentially having a curriculum such as into reading might be very helpful to be able to start and ground. And then until you do, you need to get your sea legs a little bit. It takes a couple of years to be able to really feel like, oh, Johnny needs XYZ. I know how to do that. So there are benefits for sure to having a standardized curriculum across.
I'm also pretty confident that our teachers, if we do into reading, they're not going to lose the skills and.
Right.
and-
I was
and
just gonna say that,
professional-
exactly. If you say next September, okay, Mrs. Martin, you're gonna teach into reading, the last 20 years of teaching TC are not falling out of my brain, or from my Google Drive or anywhere else that I have in materials. So I think that's the point of, you know, that's what you get with a veteran teacher. That's what you get with teachers who've been around. They get experiences from all sorts of things that they bring in. We have a math curriculum. We have that, you know, that we use. That's not the only thing I use
Right.
when I teach math, right? There are other things I pull. I mean, Hillary's shaking her head, I'm sure Melissa is too. There are other things we pull from every day, every week, every unit, because our kids need it or we need to go about it a different way. It's never, ever in a classroom, never, ever from year to year, going to be the same thing that you just wrote do. That would be very boring and not helpful to
That's
the
good teaching.
children in front of you. So whatever the program is that we're going to be using, what we already know doesn't just get tossed into the garbage can. It comes with us and then we share it with the people around us. So I think that's it. Like, we have to remember that piece of it, that just, whether we go with a new program or an old program, or whatever the program, everything comes with us. we take all that baggage with us for the good or the bad, but we're going to use it to help our students move forward.
If I may, sorry. Katie, I obviously cannot speak to certain things. I am just a teacher. That is what I am a pro at.
Just a teacher.
Just a teacher. But to that point, obviously we want what is best for our students, right? I have 3 little ones. That's what I want when they go to school. That's what I want for the children that I consider my children when I am teaching them every single day. I want the best for them. I think there's a few things that, again, I won't go into the paras. I personally don't have an instructional para in my classroom every single day. Haven't had one for quite some time. I will leave that there. I am pulling small groups at least once a day in all components, reading, writing, math. It is exhausting, but it is worth every single thing. The reason why I am able to do this is because with TC, with the blueprints they provide, I am able to literally look at a sheet that I've grouped my students and say, this is exactly what they need. So Katie, to answer maybe one of your questions, some of my students who are approaching benchmark or potentially below benchmark, my first step with them is to have them draw a picture. We just came out of informational text, so how to do something. So we started around Halloween. What did I do with the entire first grade? Took them onto the playground, all 4 classes, and I literally carved a pumpkin in front of everyone. We scooped out the guts. They told me how to do it. And then my best learners were able to draw a picture showing me exactly how to do it. This following step with that was, what is step 1? Just tell me, right? Touch and tell. So with that blueprint, I was able to take students who were merely just able to draw a picture of what we did to get to write multiple sentences across multiple pages. The previous unit, this is with the revised unit. The previous unit, my first year, you told students, sketch across pages. What does that mean to a 6-year-old? I don't know. I don't know what to sketch across pages. I don't think I could do it as a teacher. So with more explicit small group instruction, I am able to see students grow throughout that. Something I haven't heard us discuss is Haggerty and foundations. Julie, you did bring it up previously in one of the slides. Haggerty is an incredible program that I absolutely adore. My kids love. My kids are able to say to me in class, similar to word love, Mrs. Rack, if you take away and add ch, that becomes cat and it comes chat. And they love this rhyming, and that influences their writing so much. So if I'm looking at the rubric K through 2, but into 3, Melissa and Christy, please speak to this. I'm able to see students take their phonics instruction and implement it into their writing. They are now chopping out words, sounding them out, and blending them together, improving their spelling, which is one of the things that we obviously, I think, I can't speak to the high school or the middle school, but I think that's something we want to see first graders and second graders and third graders, all of our students become better at. Additionally, foundations is absolutely essential. Chris, you have 2 girls, and I will let you speak to that. I am teaching my own 4.5-year-old foundations at home because that's how important it is to her knowing her sounds and her letters. It's important to her starting to learn to read and write herself. If she doesn't know that, she is not going to be the best reader, right? I see the benefits of it every single day. My kids love it. They love dictation. They love becoming better readers and writers. And I keep saying readers and writers because those 2 components are not silo. They are a web, they weave back and forth. And I do believe the revised units with the blueprints where I'm able to take what we are doing in foundations and teach into that in a small group, right? If we're working on digraphs, I can use that in their writing as we are going through. I don't know if you guys have questions. I've been ranting, but I do feel very strongly about taking the best of all that we have available, supplementing Greg, like the grammar. I do think, to what Melissa said, I do think there's an opportunity there. Absolutely. But I I just think that we have so many different types of learners that we need to have a program that we are able, teachers, as you trust us, we are able to take it and do what's best for our students.
Yeah. And I think to your point of trust and expertise, like I think there's a huge amount of expertise in this district and with all of you. So I am very glad that we are taking, I mean, I know at times this feels, painful and drawn out and, some teachers have said like, just make a decision already, right? But there's a great amount of expertise and I'm grateful that we are taking the time to listen to everybody and I appreciate you being here for that. So I think we're good. Any other questions? Katie, any other questions? Greg, any questions?
Good.
No?
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Maybe
very
there
All
much.
right,
might be
to
one,
be-
there
to be
might want to
continued.
be a discussion
Yeah.
about, when you say that word grammar, it feels like it's like this big word, but I don't think we've actually talked about what that teaching means and when you say grammar, it's a very big, vague word. I know in kindergarten, the grammar objectives are that they capitalize the first letter of a sentence and they capitalize the letter I. So that's the two kindergarten standards for grammar. So do I need a whole program to teach those two things? No, I can be very explicit through writing, through morning message, through different areas of my day, to just be explicit and show kids what that means and hold them accountable. And I don't think I need an reading program to teach those two skills.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, one follow-up on that.
Oh.
Amy, can you confirm that those are the only standards for kindergarten?
There are other standards in the area of literacy that might be just it for grammar, but I would want to look at. I really, right, there are so many standards, K through 12, literacy, mathematics, but Julie's saying that it is. But again, there would be speaking, listening, so those are too narrow within many other standards for writing, Katie, which may be your point.
So do we have a roadmap
Yeah, I was
of
wondering if that memo
standards,
on
not
that.
just for grammar, but for all the other areas and
Yeah.
overlapping that with option A and option B?
So Greg, that question is exactly why it's important to write and develop curriculum that's program agnostic, because we want to backwards map to all of the standards, and that's part of what we do in EduPlanet.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Amy, if the board could get a memo on that, that would be really helpful for us.
Yeah.
What specifically are you looking for? Sorry, we couldn't hear you really.
If we could get a memo on what the current standards are for reading, writing, and grammar, we can say K through 3 right now, since we're focused on early literacy. I think that would be really helpful, because I can tell you, like, as a parent, having had 3 kids go through kindergarten, that the expectations in the classroom and the output are way beyond that. So it would be nice to see what specifically is the minimum, is the benchmark, versus maybe what is the, kind of like the average output even. There's one thing, I think that, kindergarten and first grade has changed a lot. Our curriculum keeps getting more difficult. And there's also a difference between, how fortunate we are to live in Darien and such high performing, school with so many bright teachers and bright students, that what a benchmark might be and what most kids are actually doing in the classroom sometimes are different as well. Keep in mind.
The other thing I would add, Katie, to what you're saying is when I said, as far as I wouldn't want to comment on just those discrete standards, is we're often not just looking only at discrete standards, but how they apply like across the domain of literacy instruction, right? So I was saying with regard to speaking, listening, reading, and writing, the other important thing is when we look at the standards, we're always looking at what comes before and what comes after. So exactly to your point of students who are also very high achieving, we want to look at the ELDs, for example, before students enter kindergarten and see how those intersect with the kindergarten standards. And we've done some crosswalk work with that. And then thinking about, again, how do we have standards that are connecting in kindergarten that go beyond just what the grade level standard is there. And that's other work that we do in our curriculum, right?
So
Mapping.
is it relatively easy for you to just create a memo with the links to like, here are the standards? And then I'm assuming thinking like the report cards of, here's what's expected. And I don't know how delineated they are
That's easy to
anymore.
do.
Okay. All right. Thank you for doing that. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Scott, you've been super patient. Thank you very much for being here. Very much appreciate
Thank you for having us.
We are going to move on to world language. Mr. Webster.
Very wonderful.
Thank you all.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Webster, K-12 World Languages Coordinator, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you what's going on in our world. First, I have a little quiz for you all,
Okay, fun.
not to put you on the spot, but what do you think are the 5 most spoken languages in the world? Not native languages, but the 5 most commonly spoken languages in the world.
Spanish.
Yeah, I would go Mandarin, Spanish,
Mandarin,
English.
Spanish, English, yeah.
You're doing well so far.
Are we just like by
Got 3 out of
population
5.
or like
Hindi.
Overall most spoken.
Hindi.
Hindi, yeah. and there's one
Hindi?
more.
Okay. Yeah. Russian?
No,
No?
it is Arabic.
Oh, Arabic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job, guys. And so in order, it's English, Mandarin, Hindi, Spanish, and Arabic, according to the International Center for Language Studies. So why, and I had to write this out because I just didn't want to miss anything. Why is it important to study other languages? There are many reasons, including the enhancement of cognitive skills, cultural enrichment, building confidence, and expanding one's own employment opportunities. I would always tell my students a story about when in a previous career, I worked in market research, and one of our clients was Coca-Cola, for whom we consulted. They wanted to learn about consumer buying behavior in Central America. Even though I was new to the company, since I was fluent in Spanish, I possessed a critical asset that many seasoned colleagues did not have, and I was chosen for the exciting project to travel to Guatemala. As a matter of fact, I just returned from there over our holiday break. And I've always stressed to my students that our goal is to prepare them for college and beyond. Building connections can last a lifetime, and knowing another language is like having a superpower that benefits them in any career that they choose. Here's a summary of our students' exposure to languages in our classrooms in Darien. We are fortunate to begin language study here in kindergarten. Research shows that the sweet spot for language acquisition is that of children at a young age. They are like sponges as they acquire their own native language, and they can actually have a natural ability to absorb multiple languages easily. This allows them to strengthen skills like pronunciation and memory. And because Darien supports elementary language education in Spanish, we are able to offer not only AP Spanish language, but also AP Spanish literature when students become seniors. We are currently running 3 full sections of that course to students who demonstrate admirably strong proficiency. Here you can witness the journey of students from kindergarten through 12th grade and the incredible impact of teachers who have sparked a love of learning.
Mi familia, mi familia, mi familia, mi familia, papá, mamá, hermano, hermana, abuelo, abuela. Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, me voy a dormir. Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, me voy a dormir.
This is one of the promotional videos.
Today we're gonna be teaching you how to say goodbye and thank you. Goodbye is Zaijian. And thank you is Xiexie. Zaijian.
You should take me into it because the language is based on real life. We can see a person holding a fighting tool. This gets transferred all the way to this, which in modern days means I, me.
你好，我是程，that means I'm Trevor. 你好，我是 Liam. That means I'm Liam. Our favorite part about Mandarin is Lemaitre, our teacher. This is just another fun activity that we do in Mandarin. Mandarin is so fun, and you can learn so many new things. If you're looking for a new language, then next year choose Mandarin.
That's a promotional video for the rising 6th graders. So as you can see, music is a powerful tool and highly effective for vocabulary retention. When reviewing past material, my upperclassmen students could instantly remember the songs from the beginning of this video that they learned at Oxbridge or Holmes. And before I knew it, they were belting them out at the top of their lungs. Here's more of a glimpse into the life of language classes at Darien. Since language is deeply intertwined with culture, students not only develop their ability to speak the language they study, but also immerse themselves in the customs and traditions of the people who speak it. The World Readiness Standards for Learning Languages is a concept supported by ACTFL, which is our national governing body for curriculum development. The 5 C's, as they call it, stress the application of learning language beyond the instruction setting. As you can see, there is a compelling alignment between these standards and those captured by Darien's vision of the graduate. Our mission is, through the instruction of language and culture, to broaden students' communication skills while fostering inquisitiveness and respect for other cultures. We are preparing students to be curious, independent, and empathetic global citizens. Using the backward design approach, we are hard at work in writing and memorializing curriculum in EduPlanet across our 5 languages and across all grade levels. As you may recall, this is some of the work that our colleagues completed last summer. Our goal is to consider these writing projects through the lens of strengthening the 4 skill areas, which are reading, writing, listening, and speaking in a comprehensive manner, while aiming to raise proficiency at each level. So you can see some of the projects we're working on this year, as well as some of the proposed projects we have for next year. Language pedagogy has evolved over the years, and research on second language acquisition emphasizes the importance of maximizing learners' exposure to the target language for successful acquisition. They're not just learning a language, they're immersing in a culture that brings the language to life, giving meaning to the words and shaping the way they view the world. Both teachers and students need to remain actively engaged in using the target language as much as possible. According to ACTFL guidelines, instruction should be conducted in the target language at least 90% of the time across all levels. So even in kindergarten, this goal is achievable if the language is made comprehensible, meaning that listeners can grasp its meaning without fully understanding every word or structure. Alongside using authentic cultural resources and incorporating backward design, this is one of the core practices that we apply to our process. As mentioned, we assess in 4 different skill areas and additionally through 3 modalities, which are interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational. Since we all have multiple learning styles, we employ the same logic to our approach to designing assessments. In addition to standard quizzes and tests, we evaluate mastery through methods like debates, Socratic seminars, and poetry recitations. Project-based learning is actually not new to our discipline. Rather, it has long been an organic way for students to demonstrate their knowledge by using the language in authentic ways. We also assess proficiency by offering the stamp exam at DHS, which is how students can qualify to earn the seal of biliteracy. They can also earn multiple seals in their heritage and native languages spoken at home. 8th graders are also currently tested with the stamp assessment. And this year, in reviewing our alignment to curriculum and instruction, we are conducting an inquiry into the merits of the standardized testing at that level at MMS and exploring alternative ways to assess proficiency at that grade level. And we will share our findings with you later this spring. The ultimate goal, of course, is for students to eventually use their skills in real-world situations. With our newly established National Language Honor Societies, for example, students must fulfill service hours. This can manifest in many ways, like tutoring Mandarin to younger students, assisting a Tokenique Spanish teacher, helping patients at Norwalk Hospital with translating, or even teaching French to senior citizens at Atria down the road. We make the most of every opportunity to come together and collaborate on curriculum and instruction. It's clear that we've been very productive this year. We've leveraged the expertise of our own teachers through ed camps, worked with library and media staff to train on new platforms like WeVideo and podcasting software, and participated in webinars with the creators of tools like Note, which is a website that we use for vocabulary acquisition. We remain committed to maximizing shared time, whether during professional learning days or during PLCs. There is a lot to celebrate in our department. And here are a few notable points. We have an enhanced opportunity to take a better look at linking our K-12 program and strengthening vertical alignment. 43% of our seniors earned the seal of biliteracy this past year, which is nearly at the top of our DERG. And don't worry, we beat a certain bordering town. An astounding 93% of students are achieving excellence on their AP exams in languages, scoring 3 or above, which is compared to 73% nationally. We also rolled out the UConn ECE Spanish course this year, so dozens of students are earning college credit, which are transferable to most other colleges in the country. And our language honor societies are now established chapters that are aligned nationally, which offers them greater recognition and elevated status. Some things we're looking forward to next year include offering our ASL students a continued pathway to the next level, as well as the first cohort of MMS Mandarin students entering the high school. Stay tuned as we'd like to propose offering 2 international trips in 2026 to France and to Spain. Our international trips with DHS students have proven to be incredibly enriching, offering them valuable opportunities to apply their language skills and gain a deeper understanding of diverse cultures and lifestyles. And you can see here 2 images of previous trips that we've taken. Our colleagues will also continue to conduct instructional rounds where we not only get the chance to put the lens on student learning, but also share best practices with each other. During our vertical curriculum discussions, we have identified an opportunity to improve alignment and inclusivity by revisiting the naming conventions of language courses at MMS. Currently, courses are labeled by grade level, such as Mandarin 6 or French 7. We propose renaming these courses to align with the program of studies at DHS. This change would not only create a smoother transition between levels, but also help reduce any stigma for students studying at a different level, such as a 7th grader new to the district starting a new language. We believe this updated system will streamline processes and foster a more inclusive learning environment. Thank you so much for your time, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Scott. A couple, just quick question about that course renaming. That seems to make a lot of sense to me.
Okay, go back to that.
Do we need to be involved with that? Is it, I mean, it's not necessarily changing anything. Do we need full board approval? No, I mean, I don't know. No, it's not a new course, so it's
Any
just,
content or curriculum.
Okay, yeah.
Curriculum,
I don't know if you-
Okay.
just a naming convention.
Yeah,
So
I mean-
that eventually, course selection and, course, the guidance and school counseling will be more streamlined.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I also, I feel like, Shirley, maybe you can speak to this, is that many kids that are receiving services get pulled out of languages, and this would help remove that stigma, being.
Correct. We have about, sorry, Shirley. We have about 60 students currently in 8th grade right now, who are not studying language. So
And it's just more accurate, giving credence and credit to the fact that really level 1 is completed at the middle school level. It's just more accurate naming.
I'm also curious, Scott, now that your position is K-12, what have you found in that 5 to 6 transition? Is there anything, do you think that there's the elementary, I don't want to put you spot, like this is the change now, but like, what do you see, from that 5 to 6? Is there anything you want to change about the elementary curriculum, or, just highlights of what you're noticing?
Or 8-9.
Or 8-9, yeah, sorry.
So fortunately, we've had a lot of opportunities to work with the K-12, K-5 group, right? And also include them with the 6, 8, and 9, 12 groups, and have some deeper conversations about the transitions. And while we have a really strong program, right, there's always room for improvement, right? So we are looking forward to even next Friday having that discussion, and really, like I'm having the kindergartners do a mini lesson, and then the 12th grade teacher do a mini lesson too, just to show like, what does it look like, right? To really kind of bring to life our program. And so we have some work to do there, and we're fortunate to get to use all this PLC time.
Yeah, that's
PLC
great.
time to do that.
And with the new Mandarin cohort coming up, do you anticipate that anything will need to change at the high school with those courses, or no?
So far, not yet. I've been working with the middle school and high school teachers to really discuss what the appropriate entry level point is. And so we've been working on that curriculum, and we want to make a nice streamlined, easy transition for those kids. And eventually we'll be able to offer AP Mandarin, which is super exciting, with your approval, of course. And so far so good.
Okay, awesome. Greg, did you have questions? Katie, are you still on? I can't see you. If not, I will ask Robin's question. Oh, there she is.
I am. I do have a couple questions. Thank you. I was hoping that you might be able to speak at a high level to, coming back to the slide that you had from, I forget how you pronounce the acronym, the ACTFL, the Council on Teaching Foreign Languages, and those core practices.
Mhm.
Could you just give us, a quick overview of maybe like the breakdown of components that students are assessed on from, how much of it, and using it at high school, how much of it is writing, how much of it is speaking? Can you just give us a little bit of expectations on what students are expected to learn and how they're assessed?
Great question, Katie. We really look at the top, right? Backwards design. So we're looking at the top levels, AP Lit, AP Language, and looking at what those standards are and what those expectations are. And really so that it just doesn't fall completely on those teachers to teach those skills, right? Really, we want to start that in kindergarten, obviously at different levels, different expectation levels. But we're always assessing the 4 skills, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, K through 12, right? But at different expectation levels. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so sorry. So to be clear then, there's 4 components that should make up
Correct.
instruction and assessment for
Yes.
all levels, really.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's so helpful. And then just one follow-up question, if I may, because I know it's hard on Zoom. I didn't see on this slide of sort of like the core practices, the best practices. Could you just give us an idea on what is considered best practices for class sizes in teaching foreign language?
It's a little lower than what we currently see in Darien. I believe ACTFL recommends 16 students as a maximum,
I think depending upon the level.
depending upon the level. Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's low. Okay. Robin is passed along a question. She wants to know how much of our curriculum and resources we are developing in-house versus, textbooks and workbooks and that kind of stuff.
That's a great question. So, yeah, like Julie alluded to before, a resource is not curriculum, right? So we pull from lots of different resources and we do base our curriculum loosely off of textbooks. We use the skeleton of the themes and the standards and vocabulary, right? But I would say the vast majority is produced in-house.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know there's Latin books in our budget for this year. So for each language, there is a set of textbooks,
True.
right?
It is kind of language dependent as well. To
Okay.
that point, right? Like Latin and Mandarin really people rely a little bit more on text.
Okay.
And AS. Yeah.
Okay. I think part of the reason she was asking this is that, having teachers write their own curriculum is expensive. Do we feel like that's the most efficient use of do you speak to that, to that model versus just,
We both can. So what I would say is, traditionally how a textbook, even our more current world language textbooks, for example, in Spanish are written in a way that probably many of us around the table remember being taught a world language. So for example, like a heavy focus on conjugation, that's naturally not how children learn a language. We think about our own children in our homes, and to Katie's question of what is assessed, those 4 core language skills are always assessed, like Scott said, in degrees of sophistication as children move forward with the language. Children naturally, when they're beginning a language, are practicing more of their receptive skills of speaking and listening, more so obviously than reading and writing, just like in English. Traditional textbooks focus more on that kind of traditional approach. And when we think about what children are going to be using their language for and the kind of competency we want to develop, it goes beyond just kind of that traditional reading and writing aspect. And again, that's what most textbooks would focus on.
okay.
So it's really important to develop a curricula that allows for more not only access, but more relevant use of language that's more motivating and more around comprehensible input.
Exactly. Like the way I learned was maybe a little bit more rote learning focused and textbook focused. Like, tell me the answer to number 13. And that doesn't happen anymore. It's really, like Amy said, it's evolved over the years, and it's really evolved to a point where it's much more student centered, right? It's learner centered. performance-based focus.
Yeah, it's maybe, and it's more motivating, right, to students. It's like, there's a place for explicit direct instruction for sure, but you're not going to go out in a country beyond the United States or even speak here to someone like I speak, you speak, he speaks, we speak, they speak. That's not functional language. So we need to have a balance of both.
Right.
Our students certainly need functional language that's comprehensible input for their use out in the world. And we also want them to be accurate, systematic users of language and to understand how the language functions.
Right. And, to your point, it's very language dependent, right? Like Latin is very different than those
For
that are-
sure.
that are live languages.
Yeah.
Other questions? Oh, Jill, you had some?
Thank you. I think that since we're looking at K-3 literacy and underlying, of course, we're talking about the selection of curriculum, but underlying that is the philosophy of how we want to be teaching literacy to our young students. I think it's very important, maybe not necessarily today, but to show an explicit tie between the skill sets that we're creating for the teaching of English language and the skill sets that work and the philosophy we're using to teach foreign language, because I think we need to they should, if we're picking a philosophy, I would suggest this should be common across the disciplines. So I'd like to see that show up as an explicit discussion, please.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Can I ask you a question, Scott?
Of course.
And I haven't prepped you for this question, okay? So answer it as you may. We did a redesign, right? For the position, your leadership position. What are you finding? Any takeaways of what's harder to deal with or not to deal with, or just I should have probably, but anyway, just a wee sense of like how that's working out, and feel free to good, the bad, and different. Okay.
Yeah, no, for me, I'm very appreciative of this role. It's very exciting. I'm learning a lot more, frankly, about the K-5 world with which I wasn't as familiar, right? And but I have a wonderful, wonderful team. I mean, K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12. I'm relying on their expertise, their skill sets, and I'm so lucky to be working with all of them as well. And to me, it's exciting. It's a challenge, right? I always like to challenge myself.
I have no other. I just wanted your reaction here. Thank you very much for your leadership.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And we will move to public comment.
Good morning. If anybody in person or online would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium or use the raised hand icon and wait to be recognized. Please state your name and address for the record and note that you have up to 3 minutes to comment.
All right, we have 2 board members who would like to public comment. Go ahead, Joanna.
Hi, Joanna Walsh, 17 Pleasant Street. I'm not on the curriculum committee, so I waited to public comment. This is about literacy. I have an 11th grader who was reading at a very early age, and he was like inhaling book series in the 2nd grade. But he was never explicitly taught how to write a cogent and logical argument. When he got to high school, it was clear that he was expected to know how to write one, but he did not have the skills to do so. And we had to hire a private tutor to remediate that. And this is my anecdote, but it is something I've heard from parents of my students' peers, and other parents throughout my time at CDSP. This is something that comes up again and again and again. I also have a 5th grader. He goes to a school for learning differences. He is double dyslexic. He is still not at grade level for reading, but getting close. He has tremendous issues with encoding, which basically means that he cannot, the act of taking the words in his head, translating them to letters and then putting them down on paper is something he still really cannot do. He does everything when it comes to writing, speech to text. In his writing class, he already has a tremendous grasp on grammar and how to build a sentence and a paragraph and a story. Now, my 11th grader had teacher's college, readers and writers workshop with maybe a little bit of foundations. My 5th grader now has no teacher's college, not since he left the district. And I point that out for 2 reasons. One, teacher's college is not an accessible curriculum for students with learning differences. If we want to start to curb out of district placement, we need to move away from the workshop model. 2, even for students who have no learning differences in the areas of ELA, teacher's college has still failed them. And I think if you ask a lot of the high school teachers, they will say this is also a problem, and they don't have the time or the skill base. They haven't been taught how to remediate this on the fly in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Hey, I guess I'm going to loop back to literacy as well. First of all, I'm not going to share anecdotal stories. I think as board members, we have to fly at a higher level. But I did want to loop back to a literacy discussion in terms of Alan's remarks. And I was there when Alan tried to solicit some feedback from the Commissioner of the State Department of Education at the CAPS conference. And I got to say, Alan tried various angles to solicit feedback from the commissioner related to Darien's efforts to modify its curriculum. And I know we're a continuous improvement district, but Alan was looking for ways that we were in compliance with the new legislation. And all I can tell you in a couple words is the commissioner feedback was woefully deficient, or maybe I would say non-existent. And what it revealed to me, that this State Department of Education has no real plan or benchmark set to, meet what I personally view as misguided legislation. So what I'm going to pursue as a board member is rely on all the great people that stood around this or sat around this table this morning in looking for ways to continuously improve. Look for ways that we can find some direction from the state. But I just want to encourage you to do your good work in modifying the curriculum and pursuing that. But let's not look to the state for direct answers, at least based on the feedback that I saw.
Thanks.
We
Any
have
other?
no more raised
No more
hands.
raised hands? Okay.